Party Finder. These words evoke a variety of feelings from Final Fantasy XIV players who already actively raid, but then there are those who are interested in raiding and haven't started yet. Maybe you're someone who has always felt a bit confused about how to use Party Finder, or maybe you're intimidated by the idea of using Party Finder because you're afraid of breaking some unspoken rules or etiquette. I get asked a lot of questions when it comes to raiding, and so I made my first How to Raid in Final Fantasy XIV video, in which I tried to cover all of the basics without going too in-depth. However, there's still much more to know when it comes to raiding in any MMO, too much to fit into one single video. So this video is going to be focused on the questions I get related to actually using Party Finder. My hope is that by the end of this video, you feel like you have a solid understanding of Party Finder, how to use it, and have the confidence to join and even list your own parties. So let's start off with the absolute very first thing you need to know. What even is Party Finder? Party Finder is unlocked after doing the first 3 dungeons in the MSQ, and it's found in the Party tab of your menu. Party Finder is a way to group up with other players for specific purposes. When you directly queue for something like a trial or a dungeon or roulette, that's using Duty Finder. There's no pre-forming of a party before actually queuing in. Party Finder is used for a variety of things, the 3 most common things being people advertising venues, parties for hunt trains, and raiding. In this video, we're going to be focusing on the use of Party Finder for raiding purposes. Real quick before we get into Party Finder talk, I want to explain the nomenclature of the raids because I'm going to be referring to things like M6S and M8S in this video, and the abbreviations aren't always entirely clear based off of the actual official name of the fight. If you already know how the raid naming system works, feel free to just skip this part. So, the community refers to the raids as a letter, a number, and then either N or S at the end. The reasons for this are: 1. Every expansion has a total of 12 raids, which are divided into sets or tiers of 4. 2. There's a normal version of every raid, which is where the N comes from, and a savage version, which is where the S comes from. And 3. Each expansion's raid series has a story and a questline with it, which is usually what the community uses to decide what letter to label the raid name abbreviations with. For example, the Shadowbringer raid series is the Eden raid series. Therefore, the Eden raids are E1S, E2S, E3S, so on and so forth. The Stormblood raid series is about Omega, so those fights were named O3S, O5S, despite the instance names being Deltascape, Sigmascape, and Alphascape. The dawntrail ones are kind of annoying because the names of the fights all start with AAC, but the letter A was used for the Heavensward Alexander raids. However, Square Enix decided to kindly put a letter and number combo at the end of each dawntrail raid name. As you can see here, we have M1, M2, M3, M4, and then they not so kindly had the 1 through 4 repeat for the next tier. So the community went with M for the dawntrail raid letter, but you'll have to try to not get confused by having multiple fights with M1 or M2 at the end. Even though AAC Cruiserweight M1 is called M1 in the instance name, it's actually M5 in raiding shorthand, since it's the 5th fight in the whole raid series. Now that we've got that out of the way and we know what Party Finder is, how do we use it? When it comes to raiding and using Party Finder, there are 3 main types of parties: prog parties, clear parties, and re-clear parties. I would say the most important thing that you want to always include in your Party Finder listings or pay attention to in other listings are some keywords that are able to immediately tell you what the goal or purpose of the party is. Some common keywords are fresh, meaning that party is for players going into the listed fight for the first time, but people who have already been in the fight or even cleared it are welcome to join these fights if they would like to help. Clear means that party is for players who are all actively ready and trying to clear the fight. Everyone in parties listed with a goal of clearing should have mostly seen and rage of the fight and, very importantly, be comfortable and confident in their ability to consistently do all of the mechanics in the fight. A party listed as a clear isn't just players who want to clear, but players who are actually confident and ready to clear. Re-clear is pretty straightforward. A party labeled as a re-clear is for players who have already cleared the fight at least one time. A less popular but still common enough keyword I'd like to mention is blind. This means that that party is doing the listed fight without any guides or videos or any prior knowledge of the fight. This is another situation where players who have already done the fight are welcome to join for fun, but it is very important that you do not spoil mechanics for the players in these parties. They want to enjoy figuring things out for themselves, so do not explain how anything in the fight works. Let them discuss things amongst themselves and try out ideas they come up with. One of the worst and rudest things you can do in Party Finder is to be the jerk that spoils the fight for players trying to enjoy doing it blind. You may notice that I'm not listing prog as a keyword here, and that's because the word prog alone is far too vague. And that's why next we're going to go over how to list and understand Party Finder listings using these keywords. I think the best way to teach you guys how to make or understand Party Finder descriptions is to use real examples, so let's take a look at some. We'll start off with a simple one. Let's say I want to make a listing for M6S Fresh Prog. I open up Party Finder and click Recruit Members to bring up the recruitment criteria window. Before you can select a specific fight, you have to use the first drop-down menu here under Duty to select the category that fight or instance falls under. At the time of making this, M6S is part of the current Savage tier, so I'll be selecting High-End Duty as the category. This category will always have all of the ultimates in them, whether they are current or not, along with the current Extreme, current Unreal, the current 4 Savage tier fights, and as of right now there's only one Chaotic raid, which is also listed here. In the future, they may keep all Chaotic Alliance raids permanently under this category the same way the ultimates are, or maybe only the most recent one. We'll just have to see once more come out. Now I can select the fight I want, which is M6S. The next drop-down option is the objective, which in this case would be practice. You don't have to select an option from this drop-down menu, but I would always recommend that you do, because it adds a tag to your Party Finder listing with a color based on which objective you choose. The tag helps people know what the party is for at a glance, and the color can make it easier for people to find and see your listing amongst a sea of other listings. Skipping the comment and role section for a moment, on the right side we have the search area section. You never need to check this first box here, and the second box would be something you check if you want the party listing to be private. This means that all players can still see your listing, but if they try to join, they will be prompted to enter a password, which is any 1 to 4 digit combination you set it to. This would only be a setting you use if you are meeting up with friends or a static. Under the next section, Conditions, we have Completion Status and Average Item Level. The 3 options for completion status are Duty Complete, Weekly Reward Unclaimed, and Duty Incomplete. If you select Duty Complete, that means that only players who have already cleared the fight at least one time before will be able to join. If you select Duty Complete, Weekly Reward Unclaimed, then not only will players have to have cleared the fight at least one time before, but they will only be able to join if they have not yet gotten their re-clear that week. This option exists because of the way loot and the loot lockout works in Savage, which if you're unsure about, I explain it in my How to Raid video, which I'll put in a card here in the corner as well as in the description. If you were to select Duty Incomplete, the only players who would be able to join would be ones who have never cleared the fight, ever. So since we're an M6S Fresh Prog Party Finder, we're not actually going to select any of these options. It's fine if players who haven't cleared join, and it's fine if players who have cleared want to join for fun or to help. As for the average item level, when it comes to doing new or current Savage tiers, I personally always set the average item level to whatever the item level of that tier's crafted gear is. If you're going to be doing new Savage fights when they come out, the bare minimum that players should be doing is having at least full crafted gear with base melds. In this case, the current crafted gear item level is 740. For most purposes, you're not going to be touching any of the options under the Duty Finder settings category, but we'll go over them real quick. Unrestricted party also often gets called unsynced, which is when you're queuing into something with the unrestricted party setting on in your Duty Finder. This means that your job level and item level will not be synced down when going into lower level content, and you will be instantly queued in with only yourself and anyone else that is already in your party. Minimum item level and silence echo are options that are used when people are doing old content, but with those 2 settings turned on to try to make the experience similar to what it was like doing it when it was brand new. And the loot rules drop-down menu is to clarify, you guessed it, what the loot rules will be. Normal means everyone can roll need, greed only means everyone can only greed, and loot master means the party leader has 100% control over who gets every single piece of loot. Note that selecting the loot rule here is just to put the loot master tag on the Party Finder listing. If you are ever going to change the loot rules, you have to do so in your Duty Finder settings before you queue in. As I said, when it comes to raiding, you're likely never really going to be touching any of these settings, and we're not going to be in our examples today either. Back to the left side, we have 2 more sections to go through. The comment section is going to be the most important, as this is where you can type exactly what this party is for. For our current example, we're going to be putting Fresh Prog, but that's not all we need. If this were Blind Prog, the comment would be something like, Blind Fresh Prog, helpers welcome but do not spoil. But since we're not doing this blind, that means that everyone joining the party and the party leader themselves should all be using the same resource for reference of what strats are going to be used in this specific party. So let's add a raid plan link along with the name of the strat in the raid plan if it has one, which in this case is Toxic. Since this is a simple example of just a Fresh Prog party listing, that's all we need for the description. The last section is roles on the bottom left. A standard party comp is 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 4 DPS. When it comes to ultimate content and new Savage content, you're generally always going to want to select the following. Unselect classes, 1 player per job, leave the 2 tank slots, set 1 healer slot to pure healer and the other to barrier healer, 1 DPS slot to melee DPS, 1 DPS slot to physical range DPS, 1 DPS slot to magical range DPS, excluding blue mage of course, and the last DPS slot can be left to any DPS. The reason for having at least one of each type of DPS player is because each role gives a 1% raid bonus, totaling and maxing at 5% when you have at least one tank, one healer, one melee DPS, one fizz range DPS, and one caster DPS. This raid bonus is a percent bonus to everyone's main stats, including vitality. There's a wide misconception that you have to have specifically 2 melee DPS for this bonus, but that is incorrect. You only need 1 DPS of each type, and the 4th DPS can be any. Do note that you do not always need the full 5% bonus. When it comes to extreme and unreal content or savage raids late into the tier when everyone has lots of gear, if you have, for example, 2 melee and 2 casters, you're still getting a 4% bonus and will be perfectly fine without that extra 1%. With all of that set, our M6S Fresh Bug Party is ready to go. Now that we understand each part of the Party Finder listing page, let's quickly go over another example or two. Let's say I'm putting up a listing for an M8S clear. Since this is a clear party, the description is going to have to be a lot juicier, since I'll need to state what strats are being used for the entire fight. So, going through everything, high-end duty, M8S, objective gets set to duty completion since that's our goal. The only condition I want here is an average item level of the current crafted gear, set all the jobs so we get the full 5% bonus, and now for the description, and bear with me here. Clear, Toxic P1, Fairing Decay, DN Rage, 1 Quad Moonlight, Toxic P2, with the pastebin link. This is going to look and sound like a bunch of mumbo jumbo if you don't know the fight already, but what this description boils down to is our objective, clear, and any strats we're using for different mechanics. Toxic P1 means that that's the raid plan or strats for phase 1, the strat Fairing for the mechanic Decay, the strat DN for the mechanic Rage, the strat 1 Quad for the mechanic Moonlight, and the strats are raid plan Toxic for phase 2. Not every fight is going to need this much in the description, but sometimes they do, so hopefully this explanation has made sense and made these long descriptions less confusing. And one last example for the road, an M7S 2 chest re-clear. High-end duty, M7S, objective in this case gets set to loot since this is a 2 chest party, an average item level of the current crafted gear, set all jobs so we get the full 5% bonus, and this time we're going to be utilizing the Duty Complete Weekly Reward Unclaimed setting to ensure that only people who have cleared before but haven't re-cleared for this week can join. And as always, we'll use the description to list both our objective and what strats we're doing. 2 chests re-clear, Toxic P1, Locked Seeds, Toxic P3. Again, this is just the objective, strat name for the mechanic, strat name for the mechanic or phase, strat name for the mechanic or phase. I didn't give an example here of listing a prog party, but if you were to list a prog party, you would do everything the same as if you were listing a fresh party for that fight, except in the description, you would want to list what the prog point is, meaning what mechanic you are currently working on, as well as any strat names or resource links that would be needed up to that prog point. It's also a good idea to know and list what strat or strats you're going to be following for at least a few mechanics after your listed prog point, if not for the entire rest of the fight. The goal of a prog party is not only to get to the prog point, but to get past it as well, so you want to be prepared for what mechanics come next. I think that wraps up the segment on using and understanding the Party Finder interface, but if I forgot to go over anything or if you have any questions still, please ask in a comment down below. I always try my best to answer any questions. Now I would like to go over some Party Finder etiquette or unspoken rules and expectations. These aren't going to be in any particular order, but are all things that I think are worth mentioning to try and ensure that everyone has the best Party Finder experience possible. First and foremost, I would say the bare minimum to do if you are going to be stepping into Savage Party Finder is to at least be in the new full crafted gear with base melds, using whichever new food is best for your job, and have some of the new pots ready to go for when you're hitting Enrage and trying to clear. If you're doing new Savage Raids week 1, ideally you should have all of your crafted gear pentamelded. This next one is only relevant for extreme weapon and mount farming, but don't loot and scoot. If you get your weapon or the mount, don't immediately leave. Try to stay for at least 1 or 2 more runs. Thirdly, be patient. Raiding in Party Finder requires patience for many reasons. You can raid whenever you want, but not all parties are going to fill very quickly. If you're waiting in a Party Finder for a while and then it finally fills, don't be the guy that leaves after 2 or 3 pulls and then makes everyone have to sit and wait again. Obviously, sometimes emergencies and responsibilities do come up in real life and you actually have to leave, but be aware of the time that you have available. If you're waiting in a Party Finder and you only have 15 to 20 minutes before you have to go, you should be respectful of everyone else's time and probably just back out. And this of course isn't to say that if you join a party you're never allowed to leave or have to stay for the full lockout every single time, but if you're leaving every party after 2 or 3 pulls, you're never going to get any actual prog. You also need to be patient when it comes to the actual raiding itself with both yourself and the other players. You're human and so you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. What matters is that you learn from the mistakes and understand how to not make the mistake again. Try your best not to get frustrated with yourself because that will only lead to more mistakes. Keeping this in mind, extend the same grace to other players. Do not get angry with someone for making a mistake or berate them or anything like that. It's obviously frustrating for the pull to end to a mistake, but I can promise you that the majority of the time, the person who made the mistake is already upset with themselves. Someone getting angry with them is only going to make them play worse. If someone makes a mistake, it's okay to ask, what happened there? Do you know what you were supposed to do or where you were supposed to go? Clarifying questions like that are good and productive because there's a difference between a mistake versus someone just not knowing what to do. Along similar lines, if you're joining a party finder or listing one, you should know what to do. If you join a clear party, you should be comfortable and confident with the entire fight and your ability to consistently execute the mechanics. If you join a prog party, you should be completely comfortable and confident up to the prog point and have studied both the prog point and after the prog point. You should also only be joining parties if you know what strats are being done. The strats being used are always listed in the party finder descriptions. Do not be the guy to join a party, sit there waiting for it to fill, and then when you finally fill and queue and go, wait, what strats are we doing? Always read the descriptions of parties before you join them, and if you're unfamiliar with any of the strats being used, make sure to check the resources they have linked in the description. If they don't have anything linked, you can always send a tell to the person who has the listing up by clicking on this button right here, and you can ask if they have a link to a raid plan or toolbox of whatever strat you need to see. There's also now this website, which will be linked in the description as well, which has pretty much all of the current strats that are being used in Party Finder for current fights. The site was made by the player Marakami Nagi of Adamantois, and my goodness dude, bless your soul for making this. Another thing that's relevant to strat talk is that you should be open to learning new strats. The first week of Savage, there's always new strats coming out from a bunch of different people, and while it can seem kind of annoying to have so many different strats, I promise you that learning various strats from mechanics will make you a better player. Learning new strats makes you understand more of how the mechanic works and why all these different strats work, rather than only ever doing the first strat you find, refusing to learn any new ones, and never knowing how the mechanic actually works. All you know is, I stand here for that. Being open to new strats is also important because early strats are usually not the best, they're just what people saw world race groups doing. When you're racing for the clear, you do whatever works just for the sake of getting past the mechanic, no matter how bad the strat may actually be. Adding on to the topic of only joining parties with prog points you're confidently able to get to, there's a big problem in Party Finder of prog lying. This is when someone knows they are not at a certain point in the fight, but purposefully join parties past their personal prog point in hopes of getting carried, or being able to say, my new prog point is now X, even though they consistently messed up and were even dead on the ground when the group got to that point. Players like this will be very obvious. I mentioned earlier that there's a difference between a mistake and someone having no clue what to do. It's pretty much always very easy to tell when someone is prog lying, as they will consistently be completely lost and have no clue what they're supposed to be doing, and these mistakes will repeat many times. Don't be a prog liar yourself, and as I've mentioned earlier, you should only be joining parties that you feel completely comfortable and confident in your ability to consistently get to the prog point of. If I were to technically get 3/4 of the way through a fight with a group but I died and messed up a lot, that is not my new prog point. My personal prog point would be one mechanic after the latest one I'm confident with. I think a lot of people prog lie by accident because of this reason. They'll be dead on the ground in a group that makes it to a certain point, and even though they messed up and didn't even get to do several mechanics, they'll think that that's their new prog point and start joining parties for that prog point. I've seen many people complain about bad Party Finder experiences, then admit to prog lying themselves, and their reason is because other people do it. This part may sound a bit idealistic to some people, but if you're going to continue prog lying because other people do it, then these other people are going to continue prog lying for that same reason, because from their perspective, you're one of the other people that's doing it. The train of thought or reasoning of other people do something so I'm gonna do it too is just an endless back and forth, and this applies to any bad Party Finder behavior we've discussed. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Be the change you wish to see in the world. If you don't want other people to do something, then don't do it yourself. If you want your time to be respected, you need to respect everyone else's time. Players love to complain about and blame everything on Party Finder, but they are Party Finder. If you want a better Party Finder experience, the cycle of bad behavior begins and ends with you. What the majority of all of this really boils down to is just being respectful of not only your own time, but the time of everyone else in the party as well. Whether you're doing 4-player content, 8-player content, 24-player content, you should always be respectful of everyone in the party and their time. I hope this was able to help some of you, and if you have any questions about anything I've said or anything I didn't cover, ask in a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all the very best of luck on your upcoming Party Finder adventures.